Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I think art and creativity make the world go around, make life worth living, make tough times bearable. I love talking to people who are doing it. Sometimes they don't get paid a lot, but they persevere and they make everything better. And today I have two guests. Lovell Holder is a director, and Roger Q. Mason is a playwright and screenwriter. And Lovell and Roger have teamed up to write the screenplay for the new movie Lavender Men, which is based on a play that Roger wrote and starred in last year or maybe a couple of years ago at the Skylight Theater here in Los Angeles. I missed the play when it was out, but it was, from what I've read, quite a sensation. I don't know how I missed it, but I'm kicking myself. But they turned it into a movie, and it's very unique. It doesn't try to pretend it's not has theater roots. It's actually set in a theater, which is ironic considering it has to do with Abraham Lincoln. And it's really like smart and interesting and beautifully mounted. And you could tell they probably didn't have a lot of money, but man, it came together beautifully. And the basic story of it is there's a character named Taffeta that Roger plays. And Taffeta is the stage manager of this small theater production that has to do with the life of Abraham Lincoln. The play doesn't look like it's very good, and Taffeta's not having a great day at work. She's overworked, she's underappreciated, some stuff goes down, and then she kind of snaps and turns the whole thing into her Fantasia, her Abraham Lincoln play, where she's in the center of everything. It's like somebody taking over the narrative. And it's got deep themes, it's got a lot of humor, and I was really impressed with the craft of everything and how it all came together. So, yeah, fun to talk to these folks. And the movie's coming out. You can watch it. So, before we get to that, though, I want to let you know that there are a few ways you can support this podcast if you enjoy it. There's more than ever ways, actually. If you want to, you can go to DennisAnyone.net and leave a tip in my virtual tip jar. I always appreciate that. And my Venmo is Dennis-Hensley. And the other thing is I recently started a Patreon because I love doing the interviews, but I find that there are other things I like talking about and sharing. And so I've started this bonus episode on Patreon once a week. It comes out on Sundays where I do some fun stuff like observation deck stuff. I talk about the science of happiness sometimes. I relive my magazine days with a fun flashback to somebody who's still relevant in the culture. Recently did Leslie Bibb, who was on White Lotus, and recalled my interview with her and some cool things about that. So it's really cool. So go to patreon.com and look for Dennis Anyone, and you'll get a bonus episode once a week. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I have a very fun So This Happened at the end of this episode related to my Patreon, and it's very heartening. It's going to blow your mind. It's kind of like So This Happened, this episode is like ties a lot of stuff together. All right, it'll give you hope for the future, maybe. Or at least my future. Which is in short supply, frankly. So we'll take all of that we can get. The other thing you can do is consider becoming a subscriber to DNR Studios. Don't just consider it, do it. I'm part of a group of shows under the Derek and Romaine podcast banner, all these fun queer shows, and for a monthly fee, you get my show early than you normally do. And you get all these other cool, fun shows. So learn about that at dnrstudios.com. All right, time for the interview. Here are director Lovell Holder and Roger Q. Mason, the star, and they co-wrote the thing together. They're from Lavender Men. Joining me now are the creative forces behind this wonderful new film, Lavender Men. We have the director, Lovell Holder, coming to us from Charlotte, North Carolina, and Roger Q. Mason, the writer and the star, coming to us from Los Angeles. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having us, Dennis.
I'm excited to talk to you about the movie, but Lovell, you're at your 20th high school reunion, you just said.
Yes.
How's it going? Did you strut in there like you owned the school?
Oh, no, it's funny. I've stayed in touch with a lot of the kids that I grew up with, so I feel like everyone's up to speed. I'm really just kind of looking forward to it.
It hasn't happened yet.
Ironically, no, Saturday. It's happening Saturday.
Oh, it's very exciting.
Ironically enough, I feel like I already got my ultimate compliment because I had some dental work done on Monday, and I was like, she's like, oh, what are you doing in town? I was like, oh, I have my high school reunion. She was like, oh, you're 10? And I was so flattered because this is my 20th. So
it is your 20th.
I will, if you think I'm in my late 20s, I will take it. Thank you so much. I will
No,
take the
your
compliment.
skin routine is everything, child. Okay, like I'm telling you.
Yeah, well,
I'm coming to that house. I'm taking photos because I need the Lovell Holder's skin routine.
You don't
honey.
need my help. You know, you have not aged in the 20 years that I have known you.
do you have
Oh,
a
Lord.
regimen like serums? Do you use serums?
You know, I really swear by. I am not a paid spokesperson,
Yeah.
but I really swear by Kiehl's. I think
Okay.
like I do their exfoliant.
Right.
I use their pretty much everything. So I swear by them.
So you
I
guys,
literally don't do anything.
yeah.
And you look great. So you just have good genetics.
I just don't do anything. I started using this olive oil soap that I think it's from Jordan. It says made in Jordan.
Oh, right on.
And
I like
it's
that.
it's just this white bar of saponated olive oil. Okay.
I like it.
And listen, honey, it exfoliates. It has no smell. So if people are, allergic to different fragrances, there is nothing, nada. That thing is fabulous. And I'm also not a paid spokesperson.
Right.
But since we're talking about products that we like for our morning routine.
Yes.
I do that. And the only other thing I've done is I'll sometimes do like one of these like prebiotic washes on my face. I think it's La Rock or something. You could buy it at the CVS.
I love it.
And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
Cut to us 45 minutes later going, you know what else I like? No. All right. We're going to talk about Lavender Men. It's a film adaptation of a play written by Roger that was performed in Los Angeles a couple of years ago at the Skylight Theater Company. And I'm kicking myself that I missed it because I've seen like 2 or 3 things there in the last year, and they're great. And I don't know how this wasn't on my radar. It was a big hit, and you decided that there's a film in here. And, stage adaptions are sometimes they feel very stagey. You guys decided to embrace that. I don't think you go to somebody and say, this is going to make a bunch of money. The reason to do it is purely creative, and it's all these artists working at the top of their game. The fonts, I love the fonts. I love the music. I love the editing, the way it looked. Like everyone was like operating at full artistic levels. But the thing that kind of struck me is, like if you're making a murder mystery, you go look at all the good murder mysteries. What are your touchstones when you're doing what you're doing? It feels totally original. So maybe start with that level as a director.
I mean, thank you first off for all the compliments there. And I would be remiss not to shout out, like, the fonts you mentioned were by Michelle Leclerc. The scores by David Gonzalez. Morgan Halsey was our editor. They were all brilliant. Our entire team was brilliant. And
There's a taste level going on that is really impressive. Sometimes someone will blow it with the font and you're like, oh. I'm kind of a font snob, but anyway, yeah. But
same.
Yeah. Oh,
But you hit the nail on the head. Every single person. This was not a payday for anybody. It was entirely a labor of love for every single member of this team. From Michelle doing the fonts straight up to Roger taking center stage. But I really think, like, to get back to the touchstones, some of the things that we really talked about as we were diving into the adaptation, one of the big ones was the Joe Wright Anna Karenina, which ironically enough, Cordelia, our publicist, and I were just speaking about, because it takes the whole story of Anna Karenina, but sets it in an old-timey Russian theater. So you're kind of moving in and out with the story throughout the dressing rooms and the backstage. But I would say also one of the big kind of like spiritual big siblings for the piece, and I'm biased because it's also my favorite movie, is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Interesting.
In terms of the ability to kind of step in and out of both memory recreation and then commenting on the memory and relating on that, but then also then kind of having a very emotional moment and then instantly undercutting it with something else. Like, I think that was a film that when working with Roger, Pete, and Alex, our brilliant trio at the center of the performances, those were really the kind of like key touchstones that we were revisiting over and over again.
Yeah. Roger, when it was going from stage to film, what were the things that you thought about as you were thinking like, okay, how is this going to work?
Well, Lovell co-wrote the movie with me, and one of the things that he was really focused on was making sure that it was not just an adaptation of the play, but that this piece was framed by a series of real life circumstances that warranted this character journeying between their imagination and the realities of who they were as an employee at that theater under those circumstances that happened in the movie. So I think what happened in the writing of that frame is that it grounded the film in something that people could follow.
Yes.
And that was relatable. And because it's essentially at its core, on one level, a workplace drama where someone is exploited by bosses and coworkers, that kind of real life circumstance is something that allows viewers to take the leap from their seat to this imagined relationship with Lincoln, because they can go, okay, I know what it is to have a horrible boss. I know what it is to be microaggressed by coworkers. I understand that reality. And I also know that sometimes I want to just fly away from that life.
Right. That I could go into my own fantasy life. It's so stressful that sometimes
that
a
I
fantasy.
could go into my own fantasy.
Yeah. Which is what happens in this story.
I think that gesture
yeah.
bought us the credibility in the public for them to go along for the ride and say, okay, I'm in. I know this life. I know that girl. I have been that girl.
Right.
I get it. Take me there.
Yeah.
And so I think those were things that we were really thinking about. And then the other thing is, like, a lot of this piece takes place on this stage, but how do you build out the depth and the physical life, but also the sort of the cast of characters around things? Because when you're in a play, you typically want to be as economical with casting as possible, unless you're doing a big Broadway musical. And then even still, you still want to be smart about who you cast. But when you do a play, there's a movie, there's almost this expectation of seeing certain things that are referenced to in a play. A monologue doesn't work as well in a movie in the same way that it does in a play.
Right.
The things that you're talking about in that monologue can become a poetic visual monologue, and that means hiring more people. And so what I really did was I stepped back and I said, okay, Lovell, who are our friends and allies that can really be down with this piece, that can spend a half a day or 1 or 2 days with us and help fill in the world? And so really that first third of the movie, which has all those cameos, that's a tribute to our friend group, because a lot of those people are folks that we've known and worked with and we admire, that we just wanted to be on set to hang out with us. Not only just the people in the audience when they're watching the fake play within a play, but also like the other folks in the movie, the love interest and all that. The man, we call him, the man with the motorcycle. All of these are that's Philippe Baugen, by the way. All of these are friends of ours that we love. And I said, Lovell, just bring him in and let's hang out. And so on one level, this movie is a tribute to the power of friendship and collaboration amongst friends, because that's what you're seeing is a recording. I mean, we did this movie in 2022. They had started loosening relationships to masking and protocol with COVID, but it was still sort of uneasy about what you could do and what you couldn't do. And here we were in this theater making magic happen.
Yeah.
And we had no idea where it was going to go or what was going to happen. The other thing I want to say is and this story is interesting because in the uncertainty of the pandemic, we weren't sure if we would be able to get programmed for a premiere of the play.
Yeah,
so,
you didn't know what the future was in terms of like opportunities.
To Roger's point, we had the original premiere production of the play. We had done a public workshop on Broadway at Circle in the Square in fall of 2019. And based off of that, Skylight came in to stage the world premiere in April of 2020. We were literally in our first week of rehearsal, day 4 of table work, when down came the restrictions and we just didn't know what was going to happen. And Roger and I have talked about this many times over the last few years, is in many ways that probably was the best thing that could have happened, for the life of this piece, because all of a sudden it allowed us time to not only get it right on the page, but to make sure we had the right people on every level to bring this thing to life in the right way at the right time. And I think I think by the time that we eventually came around to finally staging the play and then doing the movie, I also think Roger and I we had learned so much more as artists and as practitioners in the years between when COVID came down versus when we made this, that I'm not sure we could have done this in the way that we did it if it had all happened as it had been according to plan.
Yeah.
We learned our worth in that moment. Over those 2 years.
Yeah.
We learned what our platforms were, because we, in various ways, Lovell and I took social media and digital storytelling quite vigorously. And that allowed us to sort of see who we were and what we were made of. And so when we came back to the table to negotiate doing the play and then the movie, we had more confidence in what we had to offer. And that debut, both of the play and also of the movie, meant something different, because for better or worse, we were in different places in our careers at that point. And so as a result, I think we were starting that project from a much stronger platform.
Right. You had more confidence in what you had.
We had done it in 2020. And we knew what we were doing. We knew what we were doing.
It casts quite a spell. It's almost like it's conjures in a way. Can you talk about the story itself, like a little synopsis, just so the listeners kind of get an idea of what we're talking about with things, the way things unfold?
Oh, you want me to do it? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what I wrote.
No, so I would describe the play like my kind of headline, I joke, is "You come for Lincoln, you stay for taffeta."
Right.
But the play follows a contemporary Los Angelino who's working as a stage manager at this kind of intimate theater where they're putting on a not so great production of Abraham Lincoln's life. And after a variety of sort of tricky interactions, without giving too many spoilers away,
a bad day at work, if you will. Yeah.
A bad day at work.
Right.
I'd say, not to presume, I would say Taffeta has had, it's one of many bad days that Taffeta has had at work.
Right.
In a job that they probably never should have agreed to. But sometimes the heart wants what it wants. As
the things we do for these men, honey. The things we do for these men.
Yeah.
But anyway, so after this particularly bad day, Taffeta finds himself alone in the empty theater, and they basically plunge themselves into this fantasia where they imagine the life of Abe Lincoln through their lens, in particular, where they also insert themselves into every single supporting role in Abe Lincoln's gay romance with his legal assistant, Elmer Ellsworth. And it all kind of builds to Taffeta having to examine this question of, why am I inserting myself into someone else's story when I could be telling my own? I could be living my own life. How do I get out of this theater, the theater being both the literal theater, but also the life that they're living in that moment?
Right. Always on the sidelines. When am I going to be the protagonist? And Taffeta gets fed up.
When do I get to be the protagonist?
Yeah. And at one point she's like, I'm just taking over. This is my Fantasia. This is how it's going to be. I am the boss now, and this is my story. And one of the actors protests, and she's like, girl, I done tell you it's my Fantasia. It's just very she just takes control of the situation. Taffeta does. I watched the trailer when they sent me this and said, do you want to, consider doing something about this? And there was one line in the trailer where I saw it and I'm like, yes, I'm in. And it's this line: God save me from great men. There's enough of them running around right now ruining everything. I think that's true.
It becomes more resonant with each passing day.
With each passing day. And all of these men that we've always been told are great, I bet there are women behind them that are greater. I bet there are people that work with them that are greater in terms of human integrity. And it's like, that was like, yep, sign me up. I am in. I loved the way it challenges our perceptions of who's the center of the story, what's going on. And yet there's a gay love affair in the middle of it between Abe Lincoln and Elmer Ellsworth. And both of the men are very handsome in the ways that we expect men in plays and movies to be handsome. And Taffeta is not immune to watching them and she's like, girl, I could watch this all day. These two, kiss and stuff like that. So I just love the way it kept playing with what we're used to, what we think we want, what else we're missing, but also, yeah, we still kind of want to watch those guys kiss. Oh, it's cool. They're taking their shirts off. Like it's very, it's just very honest about the way the world is. And I take it that was always part of what you wanted to set out to do.
That was the center of the piece. Is why do we like what we like? Yeah. Even if it sometimes is hurtful to desire it.
And Taffeta has an unrequited love in the story as well, that where that theme comes up. She
I mean, in the play, that person is sort of more nebulous. He's sort of a figment. In the movie, that person is given flesh in a very specific way that I thought, for the context of cinema, is effective because it centers the laser beam of her desire on a particular set of exchanges that never quite materialized into the love affair that she wanted. Right. And so therefore she decided, it's implied, she decided, well, if I can't be that girl, then I'll at least be in the room and be his assistant. Yeah. And that's really tragic that we put ourselves in positions where we want to have this proximity to power, to beauty, to intimacy. We don't quite get, I mean, it sounds much like online dating, honestly. Right. In a way. Like it's touchless, and yet it gives us enough of a dopamine rush and a taste of the affirmation of being told that you're beautiful, that you sit there and you're hooked. Right. You're stuck in that syndrome because it keeps feeding you little bits of what you think you need to make it. Right. And so the only antidote to that is to say no more. I've got to get away from this. Yeah. And I think what we were able to achieve in the movie is a very clear path to articulating that schism. Yeah. Between what she desires and what she needs. Whenever, the sort of first exercise that you do when you analyze a character is, what does that character want versus what they need? Oh, that's interesting. And want versus need are often two very different and contrasting things. And the space between want versus need tells you about that person. Yeah. Well, I want to be this, but what I need to do is that. And the fact that I can't reconcile those two is what gets me to the journey of the play. Yeah. The journey of the movie, in this case, is to reconcile the space between Taffeta's want to be called beautiful and her need to find beauty in herself. Yeah. Yeah. And those themes come into really collide in a scene where you just eat a pie, right? Or a cake. Or so there's a moment near the end where the stress is so much and the love affair is unfolding with the other people. And Taffeta helps herself to, is it a pie or is it a cake? But it's powerful. It's an apple pie.
It's an apple pie. Nothing more American than that.
All American is apple pie.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a recovering food addict. So I know that moment. Yeah. I've lived that moment many a night. I know what it is to eat your feelings. Yeah. And, when we did the play originally, I said, I want to do this performance art experiential thing. And I want to just eat the entire pie in front of the audience. And so there was a scene. I don't know exactly how long it was. It was time to music because Lovell had to cut me off at some point. Because I'll go on for 30 minutes and do it. Yeah.
Well, and you had also said, you were like, I don't want to keep eating. Like after we did it the first time, you're like, you got to stop me because I will get sick if I have to do this every day. And well, because a solid 90 seconds of pie eating.
Yeah, but I never actually ate any of it. That it was an illusion,
And so we had the whole and here, if you do this or if you smear, it looks like you're eating as opposed to.
There you go.
But some of those pies were actually good. So
it was all right. It depended.
Some nights mother actually ate it. But but when we did the movie, I was like, I think that's a really important beat point in the story that we need to keep. But what we did in the movie was slightly different because instead of it being a separate scene, in the play it was a separate scene. It was its own scene. In the movie, we condensed a couple of different things that happened at the same time in order to show what you're describing as this collision between her desires and her needs. In that here are these people fighting and fussing on one side, and she's so fed up with them that the only thing she can muster the strength to do is go back to old reliable. Right. Her food addiction. Yeah. And that and that's sort of that shadow self that she doesn't want anyone to know about or see, but it's really the product of all of these frustrations that she's been harboring unresolved all of this time. That's the thing she's got to let go of. So
because I was going to say, it's also a moment where I think the Fantasia really starts turning on Taffeta.
Yeah.
That this dream that she has been like staging, that she might not have as much control over it as she initially
right.
thought
It's going to bring
did.
up some shit too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think even the one of the lines that we actually found it in post, which when we added it, was like, are you going to jump? Here you are listening to these dead white boys talk about their dead ass romance. You going to jump in the coffin with them? I'll call the Grim Reaper.
Right.
Which is like the fact that in connection to Lincoln and Lincoln's life, what else is a theater to Lincoln but a coffin? It's where he was killed.
Right.
So, I mean, Taffeta is staging this whole thing, like kind of in this very purgatorial place where it does kind of determine, well, are you going to live or are you just going to keep sitting back? And so, and I think even the conversation that Abe and Elmer are having there about their own lives and their own agency, and like Abe's knowledge that if they go to Washington, D.C., Elmer is going to be killed there.
Right.
All these things that it is kind of the place where the rubber meets the road, and none of the characters can stop lying to themselves anymore. And it does all take place around a pie.
It does take place around a pie.
Conversations too.
And Lovell, you know, I mean, this moment, so, you know, so I'll answer two questions. So Dennis, you asked, why is it called a Fantasia? Oh, well, Dennis, I'll tell you why.
I love it.
It's in relationship to my love of Disney, actually.
Interesting.
I grew up going to Disneyland and watching Fantasmic, which is that
the water show.
Yeah. And at the core of that narrative is Mickey's power over their imagination. They sort of start that piece saying, you know, oh my goodness, I have this amazing imagination. It allows them to find their ability to make water move and create fire and conjure all of these beautiful love affairs, right? Like for those who've seen and then it also takes a turn, right? Now the demons start. Now the dragon. And so the key is Mickey has to reclaim his power over his imagination and say, no, I created you. You don't control me. I control you. And it's in the power of the word. It's in the power of the word and that self-reclamation that he's able to vanquish the dragon, literally.
Yeah.
And in a similar way, you know, this movie is really about one person's vanquishing of the demons in their life, which I think is a very relatable theme for the everyday viewer. We all have shadow selves. We all have those parts of who we are that we don't want people to know about, that we harbor and we push down or we don't address, and yet they eat away at us.
Yeah. And
someday we have to say, you know what? Let me take a good look in the mirror and say, that's enough. I don't need to be that person anymore.
Yeah.
I've got to let this shit go. You know, and I think that's sort of the message of this piece is, in order to solve the hurt in your life, you have to let the chains go that bind you to your current self in order to become someone new. The other thing I wanted to say was, talking about Lincoln in the theater. There's an outtake, and it doesn't make it in the film. We sort of, I don't even know if it was scripted or improvised or what, but so there's a moment where Lincoln did leave the theater.
The play ends differently than the film does, and so we actually shot the ending of the play. Like Lincoln was there with Taffeta. I won't spoil where they go, but Lincoln goes with Taffeta at the end of the play. And when we were in the edit, Morgan, our brilliant editor, and I, we were just sitting there, we were like, this feels like a repeated beat. Like it feels like Taffeta just had to leave Abe at the theater. And so even though the performances in that scene were phenomenal, and Pete, who plays Abe, was every bit as brilliant as he always is, and Roger was, of course, every bit as excellent as they always are, but we were like, it just felt like we didn't need it. Like we wanted so badly to just be with Taffeta to show that there had been some change where they were fully, for better or worse, on their own when they walk out that exit.
Yeah, Taffeta's in a totally different place. She's in a new place.
It was a really smart Morgan Halsey, who you know, in her own right is brilliant and also comes from such a a family that has literally defined American cinema. To sit in that house with that great family is to really sit at the feet of the eyes and ears that define the American movie.
Tell me more about
Roger's
this.
alluding to the fact. Well, Morgan's father, Richard Halsey, was the editor on Rocky, Edward Scissorhands. Morgan's mother, Colleen, was the editor on I Married an Axe Murderer.
Wow.
Truly. And even before that, Richard's father was a casting director in the early 20th century in Hollywood. So Morgan truly comes from genuine Hollywood legacy to this, and but on such a technical level too. From her teenage years onward, Morgan was trained in editing, and I mean, Morgan has edited every single thing I have directed, either feature or short, and she is a secret weapon. I mean,
the editing
is
so good.
Talented. Yeah.
Well,
no, Morgan. Can't say enough good things.
She's really one of the great important voices in American cinematic editing right now, Morgan Halsey. And one of the things that I really love about her is she understands editing as storytelling and as collaboration and as play. So she understands the writerly task of editing a movie, and she sees it. And so she'll give you various interpretations of a moment based on that narrative impulse. And then you get to choose your adventure however it comes. But, I'll tell you this, a little thing that I learned from Spencer Parsons, who is my film teacher, because I went to Northwestern's MFA for filmmaking. And Spencer said, turn that sound off before you edit your movie.
Interesting.
Because I do this on every film that I'm on. Whenever I am asked to give notes on a film, I turn the sound off multiple times. Because if I can understand and intuit the narrative progression of a movie with no sound, then it is fulfilling its mandate as a motion picture.
Interesting.
And then I say, what new or complementary or juxtaposing information can sound add that is not told visually through story? And at first, Lovell sort of looked at me like I was a little bit nuts when I used to do this back in the day, but he quickly sort of, I think, has adopted a version of that.
Yes, I became a converted disciple. Yes,
it's interesting.
I never look at a picture. And then when I'm editing, now you're going to think I'm a nut. So now when I'm editing sound, when I'm talking through sound, then I don't watch the pic. I first listen to it
without a picture.
Because now I need to see without a picture. Then I put it together and then I look at it. I'm saying this because there may be some, budding filmmakers that are looking for ways into the business and ways of working. And, I'm not offering this as a definitive means, but I'm just saying that that's what has worked for me. And, we've gotten quite a bit of awards for our work over the years. So I think we're doing all right with my little crazy shit. If you don't mind me saying.
Well, I just want to say that the editing definitely helps cast that spell. It'll give you, something will be unfolding and then there'll be a flash of something else and it'll add context. And it really, that souffle you're making, it's all part of it. Cause you feel like it could crash at any moment. Cause it's so different, right? I wanted to talk about, I was thinking about this the second time I was watching through part of it. It started as a stage thing. There's very serious themes in this. Very smart people are making it, but it's funny. There's a lot of humor in it. On stage, what were the big laughs? What were the parts where, this always kills?
I don't know. Well, I was just up there. You tell me.
Yeah. It is funny because thinking back to when we were developing the play, and I've got to give a lot of credit to Gary Grossman and John Lawrence Rivera, who were our producers on the play, who run Skylight Theater and Playwrights Arena, because they were really adamantly pushing to come in hard and fast with the comedy at the top of the play. So Dennis, the original play begins the moment in the film about 10 minutes in where the camera just kind of goes directly close up on Roger, and Roger starts speaking directly to camera.
The fat ass monologue.
Yes.
Yeah, I wrote that down. That's powerful.
That's how the play begins. Roger comes out, fat bitch, black queen,
Yeah.
that monologue. And Gary and John were really insistent about like, the first 15 minutes of this need to be capital C comedy. And I do think that impulse was right. I think we had to modify that for film a little bit, but
Right.
really, I think in what we always kind of kept to, and I think especially within the film, once Taffeta plunges into the Fantasia, the rule then reapplied itself, because Taffeta is trying to have a good time and trying to take solace in power and like is having like their little jokes and their motion. But
Right.
for me, the big laughs were always, and I feel like this has been the same in the film as well, from when the Fantasia kicks off through to, I would say, the first appearance of Mary Todd Lincoln when she appears.
Yeah. And Taffeta plays
the
Mary
chandelier,
Todd.
of course.
Yeah. You play
Yes,
a chandelier at one point. Like it's got a lot of
Yeah.
like flights of fancy that are kind of
Camp.
delightful.
It's
yeah.
Yes.
campy.
And,
It's campy on purpose.
unpretentious, which is
No,
awesome.
it's not pretentious.
Yeah.
But
I started writing the play while I was living in Chicago, and studying at Northwestern. And so, you know, we've been very lucky that people have observed this piece came out before the documentary on Lincoln's queerness, and before that fabulous Broadway play, Oh Mary.
Yeah.
And you know, to go first is frightening sometimes.
Right.
But I like to say that because of the disarming power of comedy, we were able to set the stage for larger national conversations around the queerness of our American leaders that complicates our relationship to history and makes them more human.
Yeah.
So that we can be more human in our application of their laws. I mean, when you look at someone like Lincoln and say, well, he may have been queer, he may have been questioning, it takes him off of the pedestal of history as this stoic, distant figure,
Right.
and makes him a human being whose values you have to now analyze as your own self in your own moment. And I think the only answer that you can give is to be empathetic to people, which, if you notice, is something that's under, scrutiny and attack right now.
It's almost a dirty
empathy
word.
is a weakness.
Yeah.
Or empathy is the new dirty word. That's a very fascinating word. Of all the words,
I thought you were about to say that's a very fascist take. And I was like, yes.
Not.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I didn't say it, but we on air and it has been said, so we can't unsay it.
I think it's fair to say, regardless of attributing it to any one person, that a lack of empathy historically has gone along with fascist movements in history.
Fair enough.
I think that's true. And it's interesting that there's a targeted attempt at sort of depopularizing and discouraging caring about other people.
Yeah.
I think that's nuts. I think that's a little crazy that you're saying to people it is weak-minded to care about other people. That's what it means.
Yeah.
When you say empathy is weakness. It's training you to feel like the only way you can be powerful and strong in the world is to be selfish.
Yeah. It's like,
Because that's the opposite of what
Yeah.
is being demonized. And I think a movie like this makes you encounter the effects of that kind of selfish grasping of power. It makes you think, who do you affect and what are the deep cutting wounds that they live with, all the way down to that dark room where they have to eat pie about it.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What are those self-destructive effects that you have on people when you are cruel and not empathetic?
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, what we can do as a society right now through art is, one, build communities of empathy.
Yeah.
Because we gonna need places of refuge right now. Because empathy is a dirty word, so in the public streets it's not allowed or it's discouraged. So we have to create those spaces, those chosen families of empathy and care and grounding. But also we have to use this art to speak up and speak out.
Yeah.
And hold leadership accountable, because lies and fascist ideas live in the darkness. They live in the closed doors. They live in the cameras turned off and the lights shut down. No, honey, mother's got her flashlight on all the time.
Yes, mother
and
does.
I think the greatest art that we have made, the art that has stood the test of time, has made us question power in a way that's simultaneously hilarious and honest.
Yeah. And they can be both.
And strikes that fine balance. And they can be both at the same time.
You guys have known each other since you were teenagers. I feel like you're both very smart, brilliant, talented artists. But when you were teenagers, you're just people that want to do creative things. Like, how are you guys the same as you were then?
I would say Roger, for the entirety of the time that Roger and I have known each other, which is coming up on 20 years, Roger has always been, as you can tell from this interview, one of the most just like beacons of language and genius that like you will ever encounter. Like Roger has a remarkable understanding of the English language and communications. And like from the moment I met Roger at 19 years old, it's just, oh, who is this person? Roger just innately makes you lean forward. And I think that is very true. I think if I was also going to identify ways in which Roger has really blossomed over the years, I would say Roger has really honed their understanding of the types of stories they want to tell and why they want to tell them. And I think Roger now approaches that from a genuinely selfless place and from a very, as you can see just over the course of this interview, a very community-minded place. And so I think that's just something that I've observed from having a reasonably up-close seat to the Roger Q. Mason show for the last 2 decades of my life.
I think the first decade was really about defining and defending self.
Yeah.
And sometimes you hurt people along the way. Scarcity is a very dangerous toxin that we drink on a daily basis in this American capitalist society.
Right. There's not enough.
We don't have
I've got
enough.
to take.
There's not enough.
Yeah. There's not enough for everybody.
Take.
It's a zero-sum game.
We live in a
Yeah.
We live in a culture of extraction.
Oof. Yeah.
We live in a culture of extraction. And so for me, the transition has been learning to embrace the possibility of abundance, which may not be present now, but will be soon if you manifest and allow it to be. Because abundance doesn't always have to be material. You can be spiritually abundant. You can change your relationship to what you have.
This movie feels abundant. It feels like everybody was on the same page. And I want to give a shout out to the two actors that play Abe and Elmer, Pete Plozek and Alex Asola. They are wonderful.
Well, and funnily enough, Pete went to college with us. Pete has been there the whole way through.
Literally on the same page.
I directed Pete in his first play that he ever acted in.
That's amazing.
Pete was on the football team. Pete was on the football team.
Pete was on the football team, and I was brought in to do what later on that same play, I was brought in to do something that would later become intimacy direction, which has now become its own field.
Yeah.
So I was brought into that production to serve as the intimacy director of the piece in a prescient gesture that prefigured this new industry that has now really redefine our relationship to consent and community care and empathy on creative sets, both theater, television, and film. So we literally were on the same page. But on the subject of page, I just want to say this. I always wanted to be Lovell Holder when I grew up. Because Lovell Holder is truly what I call a man of letters. Lovell holds dearly the spiritual power of the word. It is one of his religions. He believes devoutly that you can change people's minds through appropriately curated rhetoric and a sound and compassionate relationship to language. He really holds fast to that idea. And in a time where truth is becoming less and less objective, and language is thrown around performatively as a means of political theater, to have people who believe with all their heart in the earnest and humble power of the word is a rare gift to behold.
Roger, don't make me cry on a podcast.
No, we cry on this podcast all the time, by the way. Cry all the time.
No,
it's
but
okay.
you genuinely, you really hold as sacred, and you hold people to their word.
Yeah.
Because for you, word is power and word is bond. And you don't find folks like that anymore, especially now in a world where we are demonizing critical thinking and reading comprehension.
Yeah.
We are moving further and further and further from an earnest relationship to the word. And so folks like Lovell, who is not only a filmmaker and a playwright, but also a novelist in his own right, people like Lovell are going to be necessary warriors in the weeks and years to come.
Yeah. Because
they will become beacons of solidity and of honesty and of dependability and also of narrative leadership.
Right.
Really and truly, we're going to need men of letters like Lovell, women of letters, TGNC folks of letters who hold people accountable to their word.
Yeah.
And understand that words matter and they mean something and they hold great significance.
Yeah.
And I think to that point though, just circle back, like this was a team of warriors. I mean, Pete and Alex, who had been there from the original play through to the film, had at every turn such a deep, abiding commitment, not just to the production as a piece of art, but specifically, I think, to Roger and Roger's story and the vision that Roger was trying to communicate as these two cisgender white guys who really said, I need to be here in this capacity so that this person who normally would not be able to tell their story in this way can take the mic. And
right.
How do I support that? And how do I come here and be an ally both in front of the camera and behind the camera? And I think from our producing team of Mia Chang and Mia Ellis to just every single department head to everyone working on the movie, we already said it earlier in the interview that everyone was on the same page. And we did, I think, kind of all feel like we're going to battle. This is not easy, like in the time that we have for the budget that we're trying to hit, but it's a worthy fight. Like, right. I mean, it is the classic, like it is the good fight. And I think even just now, like going through the festival circuit and now fighting to get the theatrical release so that we can get the right press and get the right everything to make sure that the people out there who might otherwise not have an opportunity to see the play or might not have the chance to get to Festival XYZ can find this story on the widest platform and say, oh, I see myself in Taffeta, or, oh, I see myself in Abe or Elmer. That just,
right.
At every stage, it has felt worthy. Like it's never felt like letting it go was an option. Like that would have felt like quitting on a way that felt immoral to have let the baton drop.
Wow. Well, it comes through in those actors' performance. They're not just playing those characters. You feel like they have the whole piece, or there's something that's being communicated. That's I found very moving, especially when Alex's character is sympathetic to Taffeta. He sees the exploitation. He gets it, and there's something about that I found very moving. I like how this play and this whole enterprise challenges perceptions and biases in the piece, but also in its making. Like I was watching this going, oh, Roger's fucking Tony Kushner. He is Tony. Like this is the Tony Kushner shit. And then I read the press bio, and you mentioned Tony Kushner, but Tony Kushner's always looked like Tony Kushner. Like you're challenging like the who's the cool theater people. Right? What we're used to. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. Like I was like kind of knocked out by the whole thing. But something that comes through in Taffeta and is the frustration of it is like breaking barriers. It's fucking exhausting. You know what I mean? It's like, you're talking about the good fight and then you're going to hang up. And I feel like in some ways I'm trying to do that with what I do or whatever on different levels. But in some ways you do it and you hang up and you're like, fuck, So I guess my question is keeping going. Like, what keeps you guys going and motivated? And it sounds like you have a lot of cool projects happening, but it's not an easy road, right?
It's never easy to tell the truth in a world that capitalizes on lies and illusions. It is not easy to hold people accountable when the system at large depends on their abandon. It is not easy to tell stories that make people think in a world that demonizes free thought. So, no, I am never without work. There's always something to do. There's always someone who needs a helping hand. There's always some idea that has been suppressed that's worthy of uplift. There's always some history that's being buried and forgotten. And I take my shovel and go, come on, child, let's do it in one more game.
Yeah.
And that's where you need people like Lovell Holder. Because sometimes I get tired, honey.
Yeah. I get it.
And you need people around you that can lift you up and support you and make the burden a little bit lighter, or at least a little bit more sustainable, so that you can go on. I have known for a long time that I am called to do this work. It has always been my fate to flick the flame of revolution. I will tell you this. The whole reason why Lovell and I are as close in collegiate age as we are is because I started my educational journey with a little rebellion. I went to the YMCA in Los Angeles, and at 2 years old, they had mandatory naps in the middle of the day. And I thought, why are they wasting our time putting us to sleep during the most productive hours of our day? I was doing this at 2 years old, and I sat in that bed and I protested. I was like this in that bed. And the woman said, why don't you go to sleep? And I said, because you're wasting my grandmama's money. She's paying you to teach me, not watch me sleep. I said that at 2 years old.
Wow.
And they held me back another year until I performed the outward trappings of compliance. In other words, until I played like I was asleep.
You faked it till so you.
And they felt as though they had some control over me.
Yeah.
But of course, I never slept. To this day, I do not. People say, "Oh, take a nap." Fuck naps. I don't like that shit. And it's probably because of this moment. But what I'm saying to you, Dennis, is I have always been that person who questions flawed systems and points out their follies in order to make them better.
Right.
And that is something that people don't like. It makes them uncomfortable. We like things that are comfortable and easy to digest and sure and guaranteed, because we do not in Western society embrace the liminality of uncertainty and of instability. We don't know how to embrace what is uncomfortable and unknown. And my whole life has been dedicated to embracing the unknown, because only from that place can you develop the spiritual strength to master and overcome the fluctuations of human life. Yeah. Life is not perfect, Dennis, and life is not guaranteed, and life is not binary, and life is not promised.
Yeah.
And if you cannot develop a coping mechanism and a system by which to survive it, you won't make it. You will be one of the pill-popping. I'm gonna get in here.
All right.
I know, Roger's giving us the full White Lotus.
I know. I love it.
Comfort-seeking, ill-advised voting, compliant so-and-so.
Yeah.
That allows the parade of exploitation to go by while you are simultaneously its greatest component and proponent of exploitation and its most hapless victim. You have voted for your own demise because you let yourself sleep.
Yep.
I sleep when I'm ready to sleep.
That's right. I love the napping as a metaphor. I'm told I have to wrap it up. We've had a wonderful conversation. Two things. How can people see your movie?
Yes. So the movie is going to be available in a limited theatrical run on May 2nd in LA, New York, and DC. And some more cities might be popping up around then. But if all else fails, it will be available on VOD in June, just in time for Pride.
Perfect. Final question. This is a long odyssey for you guys. Say it's 30 years from now. What's a moment from the making and the journey that you'll always remember? A certain shot, a certain scene, a moment you'll always remember.
Roger, you go first.
The night you ran out of steam. And you said, I'm tired. I don't have a composition for this moment. It was where I was on the floor. And we did the scene with the almonds, and then I was on the floor. And you had storyboarded the shit out of this movie, and that was one moment that you were like,
it doesn't work anymore. We need to do something else.
It doesn't work anymore. We're midway through the week. I'm tired. And I sat there, and Gillian Williams, our acting coach on the thing, worked with you and me and the two actors, and Matt Plaxco was there. And in a matter of about 15 or 20 minutes, we had reimagined this sequence and made it fresh and new and frankly exciting in a different way. And it was just this moment of impromptu collaboration that only comes out of a room where trust and empathy reign true.
Yeah. There's a lot of care. You felt like everyone loved each other on this movie. Do you have a memory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I would say, honestly, the day of the first dress rehearsal during the play, just because I think it was the moment when I knew in my gut, like everything had happened, like all the pieces had come together just in time. And I was like, oh God, we actually have here what I always hoped it would be.
Yeah.
And so I think it was that moment where I was like, okay, we got to go. We know what we're doing. We've got it. Now it's a matter of fighting to make sure everyone sees it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that moment.
I love it. You guys, I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much for
Dennis,
your beautiful work.
Thank you so much.
I'll come and see you in one of the screenings or something. I'd love to meet you in person.
Oh, please.
Yeah. And
yes, please.
Everyone needs to watch Lavender Men. It casts quite a spell. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Roger Q. Mason and Lovell Holder. Go see Lavender Men if it's in your city. Otherwise, watch for it online in June for Pride. It's wonderful. All right. So this happened. So I had this amazing night last night where some things came together in a very fun kind of what are the chances kind of way. So I went to see the movie American Gigolo at Vidiot's in Eagle Rock, my favorite revival house. And I haven't seen American Gigolo maybe ever. I mean, I think I saw it back in the day, but I don't remember the story much. I remember Richard Gere being beautiful and naked, and so four of us went to see it, and the movie was really cool, and gosh, Richard Gere was beautiful, and I've come to appreciate Paul Schrader, the writer and director, more in the last 10 years or so, because he writes these like stories like The Card Counter with Oscar Isaac about these just morally questioning people, these protagonists, and American Gigolo is kind of like that. But here's what happened. We get there. We're in the lobby of Vidiot's. Oh, first of all, I go to the Del Taco across the street for dinner before with my friend Danny, and the server is very friendly and says hello when we walk in, and I tell her that she's the friendliest server of any Del Taco in the whole franchise. And we get to chatting a little bit, and I have a philosophy around like being nice and like being, hopefully it's not overly friendly, but like treating everyone like they're a friend, like approaching everyone like they're awesome. And I'll talk about this a little in my Science of Happiness stuff when I talk about that kind of thing on my Patreon. You can learn about that. But anyway, we got to talk, and it turns out she used to be a server at Oscar's in Palm Springs, the nightclub where we occasionally do the mismatch game. And she talked about Pride and how she loves to go out there for it and all that stuff. And she said that one time there was a celebrity who closed the place down and tipped her $6,000. And I actually got her to tell the story on my recorder. Literally, she's putting people in the drive-thru on hold so she can tell this story in a Del Taco. I recorded it, and it's on my Patreon. And you're going to hear about who that was. But anyway, that was before. And then we go to the actual vignettes, and I'm in there, and then this group of a few guys come in, and I recognize one guy kind of from around and also like Facebook or whatever. And it turns out his name is Chris, and he said to me, he goes, I just joined your Patreon today. And I was so touched. I gave him a hug. I was like, oh my God, really? I was so like, ugh. And because I don't hear it a ton from folks, and I do hear sometimes from friends, but it's just like a rare, what are the chances of meeting somebody in the wild on the day that it was the first day that I had sort of put a sample episode of the Patreon shows up in my main feed. And this sweet guy signed up for it. And we chatted for a bit, and we talked about the movie, and we're probably going to hopefully see him at Mommy Dearest with his husband on May 11th, which is going to be a blast. But I was so touched that he supported my Patreon, and he had lots of nice things to say about how he enjoys the show. And it was just like, oh, okay, I am meant to be doing this, like, because I'm kind of like, what am I supposed to be doing in this world? And that was a bit of like confirmation that, like, no, this is the thing. These are the things that I'm doing. There's not some other life that I'm meant to be living with a sustainable income. This is the one. This is it. So, but another crazy thing happened. Okay, so we go in to sit in the auditorium, and there's going to be a Q&A, and I didn't know there was a Q&A. And it was co-sponsored between Vidiots and the organization ACE, which is the American Society, or I don't know, basically editors. So they got the editor of American Gigolo, a man named Richard Halsey, who I'd never heard the name before, but he's edited a ton of movies, everything from Rocky to Joe vs. the Volcano, just like a long, illustrious career. He was probably in his 80s. And he was there being interviewed. And then I remembered in this interview that I did the morning of this screening, when I was talking to Lovell and Roger about Lavender Men, the editor is the daughter of Richard Halsey. The editor of Lavender Men is Morgan Halsey. And they talk in the interview, if you'll remember, you just listened to it, they really sing her praises and talk about the lineage of the editing genius in that family. I'd never heard of Richard Halsey or Morgan Halsey before yesterday. And here I am at this screening, and that's being discussed after that day. And my Patreon person is there. So it was just a sign from the universe that, like, this resonates. There's something there. There's not some other path that I've missed. I don't know. I just needed a little bit of like, okay, yeah, you're on the right trackness from the universe. And that was that. And it was wonderful to hear from him. Oh, he shared a great story about Rocky. There was a moment where Sylvester Stallone's on the steps, and they had shot maybe a crane shot where they pull out, and it wasn't playing right, so he has it backwards in the finished film so that it pulls in. It's just a short moment on the steps, but it's iconic, and it was a little trick. It's actually the film going backwards. That's a fun fact. Anyway, back to American Gigolo. It was kind of a cool burn. First of all, Lauren Hutton is stunning in it. I forgot Lauren Hutton was a person. She was a model. She was famous for the gap in her teeth, but when you watch the movie, you're like, that's not that big a gap, but that was her whole thing. And somebody said that she's sisters of Timothy Hutton, but I don't know if that's true, but I'd never heard that before, but I'll have to look it up. But anyway, Richard Gere is one of my favorite movie stars, super underrated, and I didn't remember what happened in the story. It had a lot of cool style. It had the Blondie song, Call Me. He gives us full frontal nudity, and he talks about how he takes pride in his work, and there was like a woman that took him 3.5 hours to get her to orgasm, but he did it. He pulled it off. He's not a quitter, and the clothes are amazing, and just I love the way he walks, and he's walking all around Westwood. Like, I thought it would be it's set in LA, so I thought it would be like Beverly Hills and Hollywood, but it's really like Westwood, maybe a little Hollywood Boulevard, Palm Springs. Cool style, and and there's he goes to a house in Palm Springs to have an encounter with a client, and it was the husband that hired him. And the husband reminded me of Trump. He's like gay Trump. He's like got that same coloring and that same hair, but he's like clearly like a closeted gay guy paying this guy to bang his wife. And anyway, gay Trump, not a savory fellow in American Gigolo. But anyway, it was another wonderful night at Vidiot's, and I was so happy that I got to meet my Patreon supporter and also see the movie and learn about that editor and connect those dots with Lavender Men. So anyway, reason to go on living. Reason to go on living. There it is, right there. All right, I'm going to wrap it up now. I'd like to give a shout-out to Oscar Rosario for mixing my episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. And anything you want to learn about what I'm up to, go to DennisAnyone.net. I have a newsletter there and other fun things that I'm up to. And that's it for this week. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye!